You wake up with massive dreams, then spend all day on the couch, and you think that makes you broken. You think that makes you lazy. Here's what's actually happening. You're ambitious about garbage that was never yours. You picked someone else's dream because it looked shiny on social media, and now your entire nervous system is rejecting it like a bad organ transplant. But instead of questioning the dream, you beat yourself up. Instead of realizing the goal is poison, you think you're weak for not swallowing it. You've created this ridiculous story where you're the villain preventing your own success. Meanwhile, your so-called laziness is the only honest part of you left. It's your soul's way of saying, this isn't it, this isn't me, this isn't why I'm here. If these words found you today, it's because something in you is ready to stop the war between who you are and who you pretend to be. The next few minutes will expose exactly why you've been fighting yourself and how to finally find the rhythm where effort feels like breathing. If this hits home, consider liking and subscribing. You're going to need reminders to stay honest. If you're hearing this right now, if these exact words found their way to your ears today, it's because something in your energy pulled this message into your orbit. You're ready to hear what you've been avoiding. You wake up every morning with this grand vision of who you could become, the business you'll build, the body you'll sculpt, the skills you'll master, and then nothing. You scroll your phone for 3 hours. You watch other people live the life you want. You promise yourself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow never is. You think you're special with this problem. You think you're uniquely broken. Here's the truth that's going to sting. You're doing exactly what millions of other confused souls are doing. You've bought into the biggest lie modern society ever sold, and now you're paying for it with your sanity. You actually believe that non-stop grinding equals success. You actually think that rest equals failure. You've let strangers on the internet convince you that unless you're destroying yourself with 16-hour workdays, you're worthless. And here's the pathetic part. You know it's nonsense, yet you still believe it. You still feel guilty when you rest. You still call yourself lazy when your body begs for a break. Let me tell you about 2 roommates I knew in college. Both wanted to become writers. The first one, Marcus, set his alarm for 4 a.m. every day. He forced himself to write for 3 hours before classes. He posted about his grind constantly. He shamed himself whenever he felt tired. He lasted exactly 5 weeks before completely burning out and didn't write another word for 2 years. The second one, David, noticed something different. He realized he naturally felt creative around 2 p.m. So he wrote then. Just 1 hour. Some days the words flowed. He kept going. Some days they didn't. He stopped. No guilt, no force. While Marcus was posting motivational quotes about crushing laziness, David was actually writing. Guess who published 3 books by graduation? You make Marcus's mistake every single day. You force yourself into someone else's schedule. You try to squeeze your natural shape into their square hole. Then when it doesn't work, when your entire being rebels against this artificial torture, you don't question the system. No, you blame yourself. You call yourself lazy. You think you're the problem. Here's what you refuse to understand. Your body isn't stupid. When it resists, when it feels heavy, when it won't move despite your mental whipping, it's not betraying you. It's trying to save you from wasting your life on the wrong path. You know that feeling when you're supposed to be working on something important, but you literally cannot make yourself care. You can stare at it for hours, but your brain just slides off like oil on water. You think that's laziness. Wrong. That's intelligence. That's your deeper wisdom screaming that this thing you're forcing isn't aligned with who you actually are. But instead of listening, you do what every other programmed robot does. You drink more coffee. You shame yourself harder. You look up productivity hacks, like you're going to trick yourself into caring about something that fundamentally doesn't match your nature. You treat yourself like a broken machine that needs fixing. You think if you just find the right morning routine, the right app, the right motivational video, suddenly you'll transform into this productivity monster who never needs rest, never questions the goal, never stops grinding. You actually believe successful people live like this. You think they spring out of bed at dawn, excited to suffer. You think they never doubt, never rest, never feel that heavy reluctance you feel. So when you experience these things, you assume you're failing. You assume you're weak. Let me destroy this fantasy for you. Every genuinely successful person I've met has one thing in common. They found something that pulled them forward naturally. They didn't have to chain themselves to their desk. They didn't have to set 17 alarms. They got absorbed in something that matched their actual nature, not some internet guru's template. But you're still trying to force yourself to care about goals that were never yours. You picked them because they sounded impressive, because they'd make your parents proud, because someone online said this was the path, and now your entire system is in revolt. And instead of questioning the goal, you question your character. You've created this ridiculous story where you're the lazy villain preventing yourself from greatness. You wake up as both the prisoner and the guard, the whip, and the back, locked in this endless self-punishment that goes nowhere. Think about how insane this is. A bird doesn't force itself to fly south for winter. A flower doesn't shame itself into blooming. A river doesn't need motivational quotes to flow downhill. But you've convinced yourself that unless every action requires massive willpower, unless you're constantly fighting yourself, you're doing it wrong. You know what's really happening when you feel lazy. Your authentic self is refusing to waste energy on fake missions. It's like your soul has a GPS, and you keep trying to drive to the wrong address. So it shuts down the engine. It makes you heavy. It fills you with resistance. Not because you're broken, but because you're heading the wrong direction. But you're too proud to admit you chose wrong. You're too attached to this image of who you're supposed to become. So you keep pushing. You keep fighting. You keep losing the same battle every single day. Here's what you need to hear but don't want to. You've been ambitious about the wrong things your entire life. You think you want that promotion, that business, that perfect body, but you don't. You want what you think they'll give you. Respect, love, permission to finally relax. You're chasing symbols, not substance. And your so-called laziness? That's the only honest part of you left. You sit there hating yourself for not hustling harder, not realizing your resistance is the smartest thing about you. It's the last piece of your authentic self refusing to die for someone else's dream. Let me tell you about Sarah. She spent 3 years forcing herself to build an online coaching business. Every morning, she'd sit at her computer, staring at the screen, unable to write a single email. She called herself pathetic. She hired productivity coaches. She tried every system, every hack, every technique to overcome her laziness. You know what she discovered when she finally stopped fighting? She hated coaching, absolutely despised it. She only started because she saw other people making money that way. Her entire business was built on copying someone else's life. The moment she admitted this, the moment she stopped trying to be someone else, her energy returned. She became a photographer instead. Now she works 12-hour days and calls it play. You do this same thing. You see someone's highlight reel and decide that's your goal. You don't ask if you actually want their life. You don't investigate if their path matches your nature. You just copy and paste their ambition onto your soul and wonder why it won't stick. You think laziness is your enemy, but laziness is just honesty without words. It's your body saying what your mouth won't. This isn't me. This isn't mine. This isn't why I'm here. But you're too terrified to listen. You'd rather be miserable trying to be someone else than risk being yourself. You'd rather fail at their dream than succeed at your own. Because at least when you fail at their dream, you can blame laziness. If you fail at your own dream, you'd have to blame yourself. Here's the sick part. You actually know what lights you up. You know exactly what makes you lose track of time, what makes effort feel effortless. But you've dismissed it because it doesn't look like success. It doesn't match the template. It won't impress strangers on the internet. You think that thing you naturally love is too simple, too weird, too unmarketable. So you bury it. You call it a hobby. You say, maybe someday, while you chase things that make you dead inside. I knew a guy who loved making miniature furniture, spent every weekend crafting tiny chairs and tables, completely absorbed, totally alive. But he thought it was childish, embarrassing. So he got his MBA, climbed the corporate ladder, made 6 figures, and felt like dying every morning. You know, what's worse than being poor doing what you love? Being rich doing what you hate, knowing you chose this prison yourself. You make this trade every day. You sacrifice your aliveness for approval. You trade your natural genius for generic success. Then you wonder why you feel lazy, why you can't make yourself care, why everything feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Your laziness isn't the problem. Your laziness is the symptom. The problem is you're living someone else's life and calling it ambition. But here's what really makes me angry about your situation. You've turned rest into shame. You've made peace your enemy. You actually feel guilty when you're not suffering. You've internalized this toxic idea that unless you're exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. You think successful people never rest. You think creativity comes from forcing. You think innovation happens when you're grinding yourself into dust. Every breakthrough in history came from someone who stopped trying so hard and let their mind wander. But you've made wandering a sin. You've made stillness a failure. You schedule every minute. You optimize every process. You turn your entire life into a productivity machine, then wonder why you feel like a robot. You wonder why nothing feels meaningful, why success feels empty, why achievement brings no satisfaction, because you're achieving the wrong things. You're succeeding at someone else's game. You're winning races you never wanted to enter. Let me tell you what's actually happening in your body when you feel lazy. Your nervous system is protecting you from wasting your finite life force on meaningless pursuits. It's like having a wise guardian that says, "No, we're not doing that. That's not what we're here for." But instead of thanking this guardian, you try to override it. You try to hack it. You try to caffeinate it into submission. You do everything except the one thing that would actually work. Listening to what it's trying to tell you. You want to know why children never feel lazy when they're playing. Because they're doing what they actually want to do. They haven't learned yet to want things they don't want. They haven't mastered the adult art of self-betrayal. But you're an expert at wanting things you don't want. You've convinced yourself you need things that drain you. You've built an entire identity around goals that someone else chose for you. Your parents wanted you to be stable, so you chose boring. Your friends wanted you to be impressive, so you chose exhausting. Society wanted you to be productive, so you chose empty. And now you're stuck in this life you built for everyone except yourself. The most pathetic part? You defend this life. You justify it. You tell yourself this is realistic and mature. You've Stockholm syndromed yourself into believing your prison is freedom. Comment prompt. What dream did you give up because it seemed unrealistic? Drop it below. Sometimes seeing it written makes it real again. You know what the real tragedy is. The thing you're naturally amazing at, the thing that feels like breathing to you, is probably exactly what the world needs from you. But you've decided it's not enough. You've decided you're not enough unless you're suffering for it. So you want to know how to fix this mess you've created. You want the secret formula to suddenly make everything click. Here's the first thing. You need to understand. You can't think your way out of this. You've been thinking for years. You've analyzed, strategized, and planned yourself into paralysis. Your thinking is the problem. You need to stop asking, "What should I do?" and start noticing what you're already doing when no one's watching. When you're procrastinating, what are you drawn to? When you're avoiding your important work, where does your attention naturally flow? That's not distraction, that's direction. But you dismiss these breadcrumbs because they don't look impressive. You're sketching in notebooks during meetings. You're researching random topics for hours. You're organizing things nobody asked you to organize. And you call this wasting time because it's not on your official list of acceptable achievements. You think your real calling is going to announce itself with trumpets and clarity. You're waiting for some voice from above to give you permission to be who you already are. But life doesn't work that way. Life whispers, and you've trained yourself to only hear screaming. Here's your new practice, and you'll probably resist this because it sounds too simple. For 1 week, Stop trying to be productive. I'm serious. Stop. Instead, become a detective of your own. Attention. What pulls you when you're not pushing? What fascinates you when you're not forcing? You'll discover something shocking. You're already ambitious about something. You're already obsessed with something, but you've been calling it procrastination because it doesn't match your fake goals. That guy I mentioned earlier who loved miniature furniture? He finally quit his corporate job, started documenting his craft online, not to build a business, just to share what he loved. Within a year, museums were commissioning his work. He makes more now playing with tiny furniture than he ever did in his suit and tie. But here's the key. He didn't start with the goal of making money. He started with the goal of being honest about what actually lit him up. You keep trying to monetize before you authenticate. You keep trying to succeed before you're even real. You're building castles on quicksand, then wondering why they keep collapsing. Let me tell you the exact moment everything changes. It's when you stop needing your passion to pay your bills immediately. When you give yourself permission to love, something without it having to save you. When you can say, "This brings me alive," without adding, "And here's my business plan," but you won't do this. You're too scared to just love something for its own sake. You need every minute to be productive. You need every hobby to be a potential career. You've turned your entire existence into a return on investment calculation. You know why monks and artists throughout history often took vows of poverty. Not because poverty is noble, but because needing less gave them freedom to pursue what actually mattered to them. But you've inflated your needs so much that you need to earn 6 figures just to feel safe. So you remain a slave to goals that aren't yours, afraid to pursue what actually calls you because it might not pay for your lifestyle. Here's the brutal truth about finding your authentic rhythm. You have to be willing to disappoint people, your parents, your friends, maybe even your current self. You have to be willing to look unsuccessful for a while. You have to be willing to not know how it's going to work out, but you're addicted to certainty. You're addicted to 5-year plans. You're addicted to knowing the ending before you begin. So you keep choosing paths where the outcome is predictable, even if the journey feels like death. You want to know what your natural rhythm looks like. Stop scheduling every minute of your day. Stop planning your weeks in advance. Start living in response to what's actually happening, not what you decided should happen last Sunday when you were making your productivity spreadsheet. Some days you'll work for 10 hours straight because you're absorbed. Some days you'll stare at clouds for an afternoon because that's what your soul needs. Both are correct. Both are productive. But you've been taught only one counts. You think successful people have consistent routines. Some do. Others are completely chaotic. The only thing they have in common is they found what works for them, not what works for everyone else. But you're still trying to force yourself into the perfect morning routine you read about online. Here's your biggest mistake. You think energy is something you generate through discipline. Wrong. Energy is something you unblock by removing what's not meant for you. Every fake goal, every borrowed dream, every should that isn't yours, they're all energy vampires. You wonder why you're exhausted. You're powering 10 lives that aren't yours. Start saying no. No to opportunities that sound good but feel heavy. No to people who need you to be someone you're not. No to goals that would impress everyone except your soul. Every no to the wrong thing is a yes to your actual life, but you're terrified of missing out. You think if you don't chase every possibility, you'll end up with nothing. So you chase everything and catch nothing. You spread yourself so thin, you disappear. Comment. Prompt. What would you do tomorrow if you knew no one would judge you for it? What would you stop doing immediately? Sometimes the answer reveals everything. Listen carefully, because this is the most important thing I'll tell you. The universe doesn't need another copy. It needs the original you. That weird combination of interests that makes no sense. That's your genius. That strange way you see things that you've been hiding. That's your gift. That natural pull towards something everyone else ignores. That's your calling. but you keep trying to sand down your edges. You keep trying to fit the mold. You keep trying to be digestible, marketable, acceptable. And in doing so, you're killing the exact thing that would have made you irreplaceable. You want to stop feeling lazy. Stop trying to be someone else. You want endless energy. Stop fighting your nature. You want to feel ambitious? Find what's already pulling you and let it. The rhythm you're looking for isn't something you create. It's something you uncover. It's already there, beating beneath all your forced routines and borrowed goals. You just have to stop the noise long enough to hear it. Some days that rhythm will say work. Some days it will say rest. Some days it will say create. Some days it will say receive. And your job isn't to judge the rhythm. Your job is to dance with it. But you've forgotten how to dance. You only know how to march. You only know how to force. You've turned your entire life into a military operation, then wonder why it feels like war. The peace you're seeking isn't at the end of achievement. It's in the alignment of being who you actually are. The energy you're seeking isn't from another productivity hack. It's from finally stopping the civil war between who you are and who you think you should be. Your laziness was never your enemy. It was your friend trying to save you from a life that wasn't yours. Your ambition was never the problem. It was just pointed at the wrong target. When you align them both toward what you actually love, they stop fighting. They start dancing, and you stop suffering. This isn't about finding your passion. This is about admitting what you already know. This isn't about discovering your purpose. This is about stopping the pretense that you don't already feel it. You know what to do. You've always known. You just haven't given yourself permission to do it. So here's your permission, not that you need it. Be exactly who you are. Want what you actually want. Rest when you need to rest. Work when you're pulled to work. Trust the rhythm that's always been there, waiting for you to stop the noise. And listen. The life you're meant to live doesn't require you to be someone else. It requires you to stop trying to be someone else. And that's not lazy. That's the most ambitious thing you could possibly do.